Welcome back to my channel. I'm here as always to talk about sewing, and this time I'm doing something a little bit different. I've taken part in the Sew Fearless Challenge. It's a challenge that's being hosted by AKRAM of AKRAM's Ideas and Megan Sullivan. They're both here on YouTube, and it's kind of fairly self-explanatory, isn't it? So fearless. The idea is to encourage everybody to sew things that you would love to sew but have been wary or nervous to actually go and do. If you've been following the challenge, Megan will have done her video yesterday, and it's me today, and then on Wednesday it's Maeve Fanning. So if you're interested in seeing what other people have done as part of this challenge, I will put a list in the link below of all the different people on YouTube that are doing videos and when they're doing them. My take on it is probably a little bit different, because I think most people the sort of projects that most people would think of as being very challenging are things like coats and tailored blazers and button-up shirts and that sort of thing. And I'm not doing that. The reason I'm not doing that is because those are actually my favourite things to sew. But that's why, in a way, I thought that this is a really good challenge to get involved in, because I was very nervous to make all those things. I spent years sewing without doing any, I mean, I didn't even sew things with zips in, let alone, you know, doing a whole coat, and I would have loved to have done, but it's partly to do with the time when I learned to sew. The internet wasn't full of sewing information like it is now. But I'd really want to encourage people to, you know, grasp the nettle and just go and find out how to make the thing you really want to do. So I think it's a great challenge, but I'm coming at this challenge from a slightly different perspective. I thought that I would look at it more from the idea of stepping out of my comfort zone. And I have chosen to make a bag, and that's because bags are one of those things that my reaction is, yes, I'd like to make that when I see a really good bag pattern, but I never do. And I saw a really nice bag pattern from Dhurata Davies. She very kindly donated some patterns to the Manchester Sewing Bee that I was hosting in February. And one of the patterns was this bag. It's the almost square messenger bag. And I really liked it. And my initial reaction when I saw that pattern was, oh, that's nice. I'd quite like to make that. But in my heart of hearts, I thought, yeah, but you won't. And I've had to think about why. And I think it's because my perception is that bags are fiddly. And, you know, just because of the sheer size of them, they're kind of fiddly and they've got lots of bits to them, and they're a bit of a faff and potentially look a bit more homemade rather than handmade. And I've found myself thinking, oh, I just can't be bothered. I had a bag on my Make 9 for 2019. I didn't make that. I did make a bag. In fact, I think it was the first and one and only bag I've made last year. But it was quite big and bold, and it wasn't what I kind of have been put off about bags. It wasn't small and fiddly. So when I saw the challenge, I thought, right, come on, step out of your comfort zone, woman up, and make the messenger bag. I've worked with a few of Dhurata's patterns before. In fact, I reviewed her recent one. And so I know that the instructions will be good. I sort of trust her. I think maybe that's the other reason I don't like bags. Sorry, I'm getting thirsty. I did have a bit of a bad experience, because a few years ago I entered a sewing competition. It's a bit of a long story, so I'll save that for another day. But I entered a sewing competition, and much to my dismay, the first thing they gave us to sew was a very small fiddly bag. It was like somewhere between like a makeup bag or a pencil case, and it went disastrously wrong for me. So that just confirmed my suspicions that bags are not my thing. Anyway, I decided I would make it, and I did that yesterday. And so what I decided to do yesterday, I've shot a little bit of footage of the various stages along the way. So I'll cut to that in a sec, and then I'll pop back and let you know how I feel about it. So I've chosen this fabric from my stash. It's obviously a nice bright yellow. I'm very fond of yellow, not particularly lemon, but I really like yellow. I bought it last year from Abakhan. It's a linen blend. It's one that you buy from one of their bargain bins. You pay for it by the weight. So it's not particularly thin, but it's also not particularly thick. So following the instructions, I did choose to interface the fabric. I guess if you were using something thicker, you might not need to, but I think for this, it would make it feel a little bit more resilient. And I've chosen a woven interfacing, which in general is my favourite if I'm going to use a fusible, because I just feel you get a better result. So now you can see it's feeling a lot thicker, and yeah, I think that's just going to work a bit better. So those are my outer pieces, and I didn't have enough to use this for all of my lining, but for some of my lining pieces I'm using this Frida Kahlo fabric, which I've been dying to find an excuse to use. It's a bit of a shame I don't have enough for all of it. So some of it's going to be, some of the lining will be in this and some will be in the yellow. And then to go with it, I nipped to my local Abakhan in Altrincham for some webbing, and they had this, and I thought that works absolutely perfectly. So I'm really pleased with that. So all my pieces are cut out here and ready to go. And I bought these two zips. I would have liked perhaps a different colour zip, but it was just what they had that fitted the size I needed and, you know, all the requirements. So I bought this magnetic bag clasp in the smaller size, which I thought was about right. But I did come a bit unstuck looking for a slider and for rings for this webbing. This is 40mm, which is what's required and I think would look great. But unfortunately, all the rings they had in Abakhans were for 30mm. So I ended up buying these two pretty big D rings, which I think will do the job because I'm assuming those are to carry the webbing onto the bag. So I think that will do the job. And then slider wise, this is a bit disappointing. The only slider they had that was 40mm was this black plastic one, which, as Louise in Abakhan's put it, is a bit rucksacky. But it doesn't matter. I think it will still be fine. It will still work okay. So I'll head over to my desk and have a look at the instructions to see what the first thing is. As you can see, the pattern comes with 3 flap variations. I'm opting for view B. View A is just a little bit too fiddly for me, so maybe that's something I might do another time, but I'm keeping it simple for this one. So it looks like the first thing I need to do is put the clasp on, so I will get going with that. So my clasp has been attached to the front. I've got one of my trusty old irons cooling it down at the moment, because once the clasp is attached and the prongs go through to the wrong side, the instructions say to put a layer of interfacing over it. So that's why it's just cooling down. So you can see there's the interfacing, and that's how it is on the right side. I'll see what I'm doing next. So I've inserted the zip. This is the back panel, that's the lining side. It was a little bit tricky, only because I think I made this opening a little bit too wide. So the edge of the zip was quite close to the edge here. So I ended up basting it in by hand before top stitching. But it's all in, it's all secure now. The instructions have said to cut 2 squares of fabric and to interface them, and I thought it was a good time to show you my sneaky tip for interfacing, which I can't always be bothered to cut a piece of interfacing the correct size. So like here, the interfacing's a bit bigger. And this is just a bog standard silicone baking sheet, the sort that supermarkets sell, you know, to put in the bottom of your oven. So you protect the ironing board and you don't have to worry about sticky residue on here, and this just peels off and then I'll just cut it. So yeah, and I mean these are, you know, £1 or 2. So I'm back. I just thought I'd show you where I'm at. These are the side gussets. They've been sewn onto the bottom gusset and it's all been pinned all the way around. When you sew these together, you leave a centimetre, which is the seam allowance, from the edge, so that's actually only up to there, which helps when you get, let's hope this focuses, get to these corners. So now I'm going to sew all the way here up to that point, pivot, and then go up, and then pin and sew the same thing to the other side of the bag. And we'll see how I get on. Here's where I'm at. It's actually beginning to look like a bag. How amazing. Yeah, I'm really finding this quite satisfying. And so I'm going to put that to one side and move on to doing another zip, which is for the internal pocket. There's the inside, that's the pocket, the internal pocket lining. And that's it on that side. This time I managed not to make it too wide, so it's a bit more successful. So I'm off to see what I need to do next. So this is the bag lining. The internal pocket has now been done, and I've sewn together these two sections along down here and across here, and then start again here, leaving a gap for turning it out, which I will do. But before I do that, I have to press open the seam allowances and sew across here. Just made the bag flap. That's the lining with the clasp, and this is the outer edge. So I'm starting to get somewhere. This is the flap that goes over, so that's the right side is the yellow, the wrong side is Frida. So that's the back edge, and then this is the lining all made up, and this is the internal pocket. That actually goes at the front. So what I'm going to do now, according to the instructions, is this way round, but I'm going to put the bag inside the lining and then sew it around the top edge. These two top edges are going to match, and I'm going to sew it all together. So I'm all pinned and ready to go. So now that's all sewn together. Do you remember there was a gap in the lining here? So I'm pulling the outer fabric of the bag through the lining, and it should all sort itself out from here. So I'd been wondering what these sections on the side gusset were for, but all has become clear. So I've made two, I guess almost like mini straps for these D-rings that are going to be for the strap to attach to, and then you sort of slot it into this side pocket and do a row of top stitching. So this is the one that's attached, and yeah, I've done a few rows of stitching there just to make sure it's secure, so that works really nicely actually. So that's the last step completed, which is just adding the strap, which is pretty straightforward. So the bag is now finished. It could probably do with a bit of a press, and I will pop back and let you know how I felt about it. So I've got the finished bag here. That's how it looks at the back. And then there is the lovely Frida. And then inside you've got an internal pocket there on the front. Yeah, and there it is inside. Yeah, I'm really glad to have joined in this challenge. That's the word I was looking for. Because it has forced me to do this bag making, which has been on my list. I think I might do the occasional one. I don't know. We'll see. I'll be honest. As a kind of experience, I didn't enjoy it as much as I do making clothes. So my instinct to some extent has been correct. I think I am somebody that likes making garments. I don't like making blinds. I don't even like making cushions, and they're pretty easy, aren't they? I don't know why. Anyway, it's just how I am. So that doesn't mean to say I didn't enjoy making it. I just did find myself thinking, yeah, there's that shirt I want to make, and I can't wait to get this done so I can go and make that. Hey ho, good to know who you are, I guess. So I think that's pretty much it from me now. Thank you very much, as always, to all the subscribers and the people who take the time to comment. I really do enjoy it. It is beginning to feel like a little bit of a community, which is great. So if you fancy subscribing, that would be marvellous. You know, if you want to be notified when I next do a video, you need to click the bell, but I think you all know that. And yeah, I am off to complete the rest of my Great Module So Long module, which I am really looking forward to getting stuck into. This, by the way, if you're interested, is the asymmetric jumper from DP Studios, which is a tricky old pattern. I did a blog for it for Minerva Crafts. So the fabric is from Minerva and it was gifted. It was about maybe a year ago in the summer. I'll put a link below because if you want to find out about that pattern, it's worth having a read of that because it was unusual. Anyway, thanks a lot, everyone. I will see you soon and yeah, keep safe. Okay, bye.